Hello, this is the Aussie Arrowhead. What you are listening to is part of a series where I read from the book What the Buddha Taught by Walpola Rahula and make some personal commentaries. The Buddhist Attitude of Mind, continued. Rahula tells a story. The Buddha once visited a people named the Kalamas in the town of Kesaputta. Seeking an audience, the Kalamas told the Buddha the following, quote, "Sir, there are some recluses and brahmanas who visit Kesaputta. They explain and illumine only their own doctrines and despise, condemn, and spurn others' doctrines. Then come other recluses and brahmanas, and they, too, in their turn, explain and illumine only their own doctrines and despise, condemn, and spurn others' doctrines. But for us, sir, we have always doubt and perplexity as to who among these venerable recluses and brahmanas spoke the truth and who spoke falsehood." Unquote. According to Rahula, the Buddha gave this advice, unique in the history of religions. Quote, "Yes, Kalamas, it is proper that you have doubt, that you have perplexity, for a doubt has arisen in a matter which is doubtful. Now look, you Kalamas, do not be led by reports, or tradition, or hearsay. Be not led by the authority of religious texts, nor by mere logic or inference, nor by considering appearances, nor by the delight in speculative opinions, nor by seeming possibilities, nor by the idea, this is our teacher. But Kalamas, when you know for yourselves that certain things are unwholesome and wrong and bad, then give them up. And when you know for yourselves that certain things are wholesome and good, then accept them and follow them." Unquote. Rahula claims the Buddha went even further, teaching the bhikkhus that a disciple should examine their teacher so that the disciple might be fully convinced of the true value of the teacher he follows. What Rahula is quoting from is the Kalama Sutta, a collection of writings that is sometimes described as the Buddha's Charter of Free Inquiry. In it, the Buddha tells us that teaching should be free from dogmatism and intolerance. Rahula says this is unique in the history of religions, and he might be right. There were people outside of religious traditions, such as Socrates, who encouraged people to think for themselves, but this was a largely philosophical exercise, and the difference here is the Kalama Sutta is a foundational text within a religion which is explicitly anti-dogma. The extent to which other religions such as Christianity and Islam allowed freedom of discussion and debate is disputed, but generally they are bound to orthodoxy. Complicating things is that heresy is also present in the Vinaya, the Buddhist rules for the Sangha and monastic life. This is Adhamma, literally the opposite of Dhamma. These are teachings or practices that contradict orthodoxy, and the gravest offences, known as parajika, will see bhikkhus kicked out of the monastery and demoted to a layperson. These include sexual intercourse, theft, murder, and false claims of spiritual attainment. In the worst cases, Sangha courts can be found in places like Sri Lanka and Burma, which have charged people with Adhamma. In Myanmar, the state Sangha Mahanayaka Committee is responsible for overseeing and regulating the country's vast monastic community and enforcing religious rules and discipline. Failure to comply will lead to imprisonment. These rules are intended to protect the integrity of the Sangha and to preserve the Buddha's teachings, but they also stifle innovation and dissent. I will leave it for you to decide whether this honours the Buddha's teachings against dogmatism within his Charter of Free Inquiry, the Kalama Sutta. The Buddha also places an emphasis on wholesome and unwholesome states of being, and tells us that when something is wholesome, we should accept and follow it, and that when something is unwholesome, we should give it up. These terms, kusala and akusala, which mean wholesome and unwholesome respectively, become a criterion for which we accept a way of living. What is an unwholesome state of being in Buddhism? These are the three poisons, or akusala mula, which translates literally to the three unwholesome roots, which are greed, hatred, and delusion. These are in contrast to the three wholesome roots, or kusala mula, which are generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. A large part of Buddhist practice is about identifying unwholesome states within us and transforming them into wholesome ones, so we live our life in accordance with the Dhamma. Another way of approaching these can be found in the 5 hindrances and the 7 factors of awakening. The 5 hindrances are ill will, pleasure-seeking, doubt, anxiety and worry, and sloth and torpor. The 7 factors of awakening are mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. The 3 poisons and the 5 hindrances can help us skillfully approach our thoughts in consideration of how unwholesome states keep us mentally and emotionally chained. We can also practice observing how the 3 poisons and the 5 hindrances arise in our minds through mindfulness and, in knowledge that thoughts are a seed which can grow into physical acts of destruction and violence in the real world, refuse to water or nurture it. It is the cultivation of wholesome states which is the most powerful, however. Through the 3 wholesome roots and the 7 factors of awakening, we can not only transform the dark clouds of emotions in our minds and free ourselves from personal suffering, we can move in a whole other direction and cultivate a loving kindness in our heart that is so deeply concentrated and strong, we can move through the world and bring it out in other people. This is our Buddha nature, the Tathagata, and the goal of the Bodhisattva is to bring out the Buddha nature in all human beings, help them achieve awakening, and to liberate all living beings from suffering. This all starts with investigating our minds and understanding the roots of suffering. The second noble truth of Buddhism teaches that desire or craving is the root of all suffering. If we think of unwholesome states of greed, fear, and delusion as manifestations of this, we can see quite plainly that they all concern something we want.